Hi everybody, Matt Lawton here. This is the Astrological Winds channel. I'm going to take a look at the astrological weather report for the week of June 27th through July 3rd. And it's going to be featured new moon in Cancer at 8 degrees, exactly square Jupiter in Aries. So that's on Tuesday, tomorrow. But there's a lot of other stuff going on this week too. So get to that in a sec. But just a little basic business here. The Astrological Winds channel is available on YouTube. It's every week comes up. So if you have a YouTube account, become a follower and turn your notifications on too. And that way you'll know when it comes up every week. And also, it's available on all kinds of podcasts, and the podcast part is really growing, and there's really no reason to see the video. For the most part, it's usually just me talking to the camera. Once in a while, I show a chart, but yeah, it's available on all types of podcasts, so the best way to find it is to just look up Astrological Winds channel on your favorite podcast. I know that it's like on Spotify and Apple iPodcasts and Reveal and several others. And also, if you have an Instagram account, just look up Astrological Winds channel and become a follower on that, and I post the link on that also. And also, if you have Instagram, sometimes I do weekly updates. Like during the week, I might, for a couple days, make some comments on certain days too, just like little not video or audio, just some comments that are written in. So there's always a chance to get a little bit of more of an update that way too. And the one other way is I do have a Facebook account that I use just for astrology. It is private though, so you have to friend me first, and that's Matthew with 2 T's, Lawton, Lauten, and at Matthew-Lawton is also my handle on Venmo. You can look me up on Zelle or PayPal too if anybody would like to make a donation. That they're always welcome, and no amount is ever too small. Okay, so I just wanted to get that basic business done because I know some of you don't make it to the end of the blog, and then you're like, hey, I wanted to talk to you about a reading or something, and you missed that part. And okay, so let's get to the weather for the week, and I want to do this new moon and there's a few other things, and then next week I'll do the July monthly one with the weekly next week. So if you're looking for that July monthly one, that'll be next week. That'll be tagged on to next week's blog. So anyway, before we get to the new moon, today, Monday, is a very dynamic day. And I do want to make one comment too. Of course, news around the world, the United States, judicial system, the Supreme Court overturned the Roe versus Wade ruling, which is a very rare thing to happen, to have a ruling from the past overturned, really out of the ordinary. And like I said, these last 2 or 3 quarterly charts, solstice and equinox charts, have shown that the judicial system in the U.S. is really out of touch with where most of the people are these days, and that there was really like a lot of stuff might start to backlash, and people really start to change their opinions about the judicial system in the U.S. And I think this is really, probably that crux moment of really where it's really gonna, really put that battle in the forefront. And what was really interesting, though, I don't know if you guys noticed, was on the day that the ruling was made, it was literally made just as the moon was making a conjunction to Uranus. How fitting is that? Just upsetting emotions or exciting emotions, depending on which side of the equation, you feel on that issue. So very, very interesting. I thought that was just really amazing. And in Taurus, too, indicating how something that had been ruled upon many years before and had become a foundational kind of part society and the security of women and their ability to, like, be economically, maybe have a little bit more of a fair ground there, like really like yanked out in a certain way. But real interesting though, like how astrology just like lines up this stuff. So the coming of the age of Aquarius, is like why we're seeing all this stress and change in life. And so that's real interesting even on a bigger level. But what a little microcosm example for us to really look how deep, like, just that aspect of that moon right before that can be like show what is really going on right in that right within that couple hours or so of that day. Anyway, this Monday, remember, I've said this before a couple of times, we have 4 planets that are all in that late 20-degree zone. Saturn, and we have Eris, and we have Pluto, and we have Neptune, all in that 26, 28. And then Uranus and Chiron are right around 16, 17. So, like, when one of them is getting the aspect, then the others are too. And this week, Mercury and Mars both get in the zone of like multiple aspecting those planets and those degrees. So on Monday, Mars gets busy in its first, and Mars is conjuncting Eris in Aries, and at the same time will be sextiling Saturn. And meanwhile, Mercury is sextiling Chiron. So I think it's a really interesting because it's like the Mars Eris conjunction is really, especially in Aries, is really something that is like a big new change, a big new beginning, which can be very upsetting. And it can feel like almost like starting over. It can feel like throwing, like basically having to throw everything out and starting all over again. So there's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of upsetting energy from that. But there's also like the opportunity to start something new, the conjunction that now you're in this reality of this is the situation that you're in, and whatever new things have come up that are like, that can be like shocking and bringing in change to you is also can be this new beginning and a path of change in your life. So when you combine that conjunction with these 2 sextiles, the Mercury sextile Chiron is seeing that there's an opportunity here, that there's some way that change can be brought in, like that the mind can wrap itself around some concepts and ideas that can actually start to help and be a step forward in a healing process, in a learning process, in a teaching process, and then you take that and combine that with the Mars sextiling Saturn, and it's like, okay, I know that if I want change, the Mars conjunct Eris, that there's a long road of building that ahead. And yet the opportunity is ripe right now because of all the upsets and all the new information that may be coming in to your life and what people are getting now. Like, that new information is a lot of that Mercury sextile Chiron, and it's a lot of the Gemini energy that's going on right now. So it's like a really great time to take that Mars Eris energy and that Aries energy as initiative to change. And and then the Saturn and the Mercury and Chiron will help organize things, plan the right steps, start doing them, getting down into the details of what needs to be done too, and knowing that in order for success to come, that you need to take care of the details and have a persistent will in doing so. So it's really like almost, practical too, like wanting, to do the practical steps and maneuvers that you need to in order to make change start to occur in the real world. And it's interesting too, a lot of this, because the Mars is conjunct Eris, may just be forced upon us, like in our lives. It may just be like, and a lot of that, in my opinion, when you look at the Mars sextile Saturn coming out of that, is actually having to be more conservative, having to be more thrifty, maybe having to put a lot of like more pleasurable results out into the future to do what's necessary now. Or so, real interesting energy to start off this week with Mars, and we'll get back to Mars later in the week. And you can also see, once again, when you think about the Roe versus Wade thing, think about how that will fit into what these groups, like right now, the initial shock, Mars conjunct Eris. And what's that going to do? Well, right now, people are talking about it, what they want to do. Mercury sextile Chiron. And now they're all rolling up their sleeves and they're like, oh, what's next? Well, there's going to be a long road ahead to get, whatever side you're on to try to get what you ultimately want in that situation. But like apply that obviously to your own life and whatever's big change has been going on there. Okay, let's get to that new moon in Cancer. And I really think that new moon in Cancer and the new moon in Leo, and I've probably said this before on past blogs, they are the purest new moons because they're really like, a new moon is the moon conjunct the sun. So that's why it's always a good time for new beginnings. So as I always tell you guys, look at the house that 8 degrees Cancer is in your chart, and that's the area of life where you're going to find some new beginnings. So it's like if it's in the 11th house, that means you might new friends. There might be like new group projects with friends, new goals with groups, things like that. So just, look at that house. But the moon in Cancer is ruled by the moon, so and when the moon in Leo, when the moon is conjunct the sun, is ruled by the sun. So to me, these are the two of the most pure new moons, because are the two most pure new moons, because the other planets are not ruling the two lights when they're in this conjunction together. So they get to like really, it's like a more of a pure download to me. And obviously the moon in Cancer is where the moon is most comfortable. It's the sign that it rules. And what it puts into the forefront of things is family, is home, is your heritage, the past, and on a larger level, like, even your nation, all those things. And the moon in Cancer is all about getting nurturing. It has to have its basic needs met to feel good. And it has to know that, that solidity is there, which is obviously something like, that, you can struggle on many different levels. It may be like, making sure that you have like, your food, your home, your health care. It may mean you're getting your emotional support that you need, all those kind of things. So when the moon in Cancer is feeling good, when it feels like it's getting that stuff, it like is very, very nurturing to others. It becomes like almost this mothering energy that wants to give love and nurturing to others. And when that security is like that, people have a tendency to like widen who their family is and may take more in, adopt more people, so to speak, into their family, but when the opposite is happening, like when people are feeling stressed that their resources are not being met, whether it's physical, emotional, when those are not happening, that's when that mothering instinct can become very intense. and it becomes more of a manipulating instinct, and especially manipulating our families or the people we consider our family, our loved ones, and trying to micromanage their lives and just getting a little bit, to the point where, your love is too conditional and it starts to chase people off. So what happens in that case, and when people are feeling that threatening, their family may end up shrinking on them, actually. But yeah, Cancer really wants to provide a place where there's a hearth and a home and safety to come back to. So that's something that's very important to now. It's also very sensitive. Full new moon too. Cancer's a very sensitive sign. So certain remarks or whatever, people can feel very emotionally charged by, And so what's interesting about this one is the square to Jupiter. It's an exact square. It's exactly 8 degrees to Jupiter in Aries too. So, normally Jupiter is something that brings in a lot of benefit and will, expand things. And, but the square is tense, and the cardinal signs being that they're all about, making sure basic needs are being met, that they can get to a point where where this energy of Aries actually will set fire to certain situations where there is insecurity being felt. So I think, this can be it can really be tricky, because it's going to be that Aries energy is very subjective and it's very egotistical, at times, and it can get into some very intense energy and feed that negative part of Cancer. And right now, the way the economy is going in the world, the way the resource issues have been going in the world, there are a lot of people, feeling very unsupported, on those levels, and also unsupported emotionally, so it's really right now that square to Jupiter makes it really hard to get out of our own subjective needs and even be able to disconnect and see where someone else's needs are at. So we all need to be aware of that, because we're all running around hey, my needs aren't being met. Well, guess what? Theirs too, that's what's happening. So it makes it really, that Aries combining right now is, I think, going to conflagrate a lot of that negative insecurity right now that can happen when people aren't getting their needs met. So we have to be aware of that energy, because otherwise we're going to be a little too wrapped up in our own stuff. And then what happens then? What happens is people, especially with Jupiter and Aries, tend to get very arrogant, self-righteous, preachy. Can you hear, and you can see, what is this? Jupiter is a social planet. Ever since it's gone into Aries the last few months, things have gotten really, really like that between the different sides. And like I said, the Roe versus Wade and the Supreme Court, and then things like that, where people are trying to dictate people's behavior towards one another because they're feeling insecure. And that's what it really comes down to, is really all of a sudden, that life is not fair, and so people get into this very defensive mode, and that, the Aries Cancer energy can really, really feed that if it gets stuck in an emotional turmoil of that situation where it's not feeling good. Now, it's and normally, we can use a lot of that Jupiter energy to really blast in an optimistic and positive energy into whatever we're doing. And that's what we need to do. Now that we're aware of where this can go, instead, we have to use that Jupiter Aries energy to be brave, to be and to stay optimistic about what's the changes that are going on around us, and to work with it, to use, there's a lot of energy under a new moon. We can start new things. And if we bring in Jupiter, they can really expand and grow and take off really quick. The thing is, too, the other thing we have to be really careful of, and this plays into it on the societal level, is that, Jupiter in Aries can get really, like stuck on its belief system, like a preacher or someone who is not, able to take any input in. It's all coming out, 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 So we have to be really, really careful of that too. Now it's interesting. A couple other things go on that on Tuesday too. Venus is sextile Jupiter too. So like I said, Jupiter normally does bring in good energy, and so does Venus. The two beneficial planets are in a beneficial aspect together. So I think this can really take some of the edge off, that there's other people you can connect with, and just kind of like relax and, kind of like maybe kind of take the energy level down, because there are, we're in this together is what the Venus sextile Jupiter is showing. And that, it's easy to relate to others now. So there's opportunities out there to make connections with others that may be beneficial, that it could actually bring financial benefits, things like that. People, can create economy and currency without a need for a structured form too. There's other ways besides like paper fiat that people can, get those things. So when they're working together, some of that stuff can come out, and maybe they'd find new ways to nurture ourselves and one another that way with this new moon in Cancer. Now, check this out too. Neptune goes retrograde that day too. So I think that's really just it's amazing how the universe works through astrology at times, because to me, that's so fitting of the whole thing. It's like, hey, we are going to now have 5 months to really look at what our values are and maybe stop blindly following them, because sometimes the results of our blind values in the real world end up bringing us into a foggy, confusing place that well, I wasn't expecting that to happen. Well, you're never going to know everything that's going to happen. So I think, it's going to be 5 months of really reassessing our values, and our ideals, and what inspires us. And, and once again, just because this is the main story in the U.S., the Roe Wade thing, I think both sides of them are going to take a step back now and be like, wow, how did we get here? And where were we maybe wrong or, confused or deceived or whatever it may be, that Neptunian energy, and how do we adjust those things now? And where do we go from here? So that's, also happening within us on a spiritual level, on an idealistic level, on a creative level, on an inspiration level, on an imagination level. Where are we going to let that take us? We're going to have 5 months to think about that. Okay, so Friday is, and remember, new moon's at 8 degrees, so check that in your own chart where that 8 degrees Cancer is, and then you'll have a good idea of where that energy is and where you can, take this energy. And, like I said, you have to be aware of it, because it really is a stressful time, and people really are not, they're not able to listen very well right now to one another. So anyway, Friday is the second part of Mars' journey this week. I mentioned today, Monday. So it's going to square Pluto. And, that is just highly, highly passionate and highly, highly volatile energy, intense. And it's going into the weekend. And, my feeling is, you go back once again to the Roe Wade thing, we may see a lot of people really, building up their anger and or their where they're at in this thing and wanting to go out there and really, conquer. That's what Mars Pluto is about. It wants to conquer everything. It wants to coerce you into the way it wants you to be. And that's why it can get violent. That's why it can get aggressive. That's why there's victims and there's perpetrators and things like that. There's this intensely, emotionally passionate drive behind a Mars square Pluto. And when it's unconscious, it usually is aggressive at the very least. It can be violent at the worst. I would think this week, the war in Ukraine will probably get a lot worse as the week goes on, the destruction and that kind of thing. But it also, in your own life, you need to be really careful about, who you're in battles with, where you are, the people around you, and, because this kind of energy is highly volatile, but it wants to reform things, and it's going to do that by destroying first. And, but when there's a blind zeal attitude behind it, it is so potentially dangerous. But when there is like conscious desire for transformation or change behind it, it's like the phoenix that can rise from the ashes, from the flames, and transformation occurs. But transformation meets great resistance with a square. And so like anything from the past that hasn't been taken care of well or has been swept under the rug is going to come back, and possibly really mess with you or in the world, and create a lot of conflict again. And to top it off, also on Friday, there's a Sun Sessi Quadri Saturn, which means people are going to be projecting these issues towards authorities who they perceive are frustrating or blocking them. And once again, with Saturn there, that's the law. That's judicial system, things like that, in a societal level. On a personal level, that's anyone who has authority over you is going to be really frustrating, and you're going to be feeling some very intense energy about that. Now, the weekend's really interesting. This is when Mercury gets involved with all these guys. And I really think there's a good opportunity for really, once again, like taking some of the stuff and really taking the ideals that we have, Mercury square Neptune, and taking opportunities to change things, sextile Eris, and then really work on grounding them into some kind of plan, organization, communication, sharing of information. Mercury trine Saturn, all on Saturday, those three aspects. So, I think the Mercury square, obviously the Mercury square Neptune is the trickiest part to this, because it's going to show where ideals fell short, where communications didn't work, where information was not correct, where we deluded ourselves with our own ideals, things like that. But somehow that's showing us also an opportunity to change, maybe because we're awakened to it, that we can now have this sextile to Eris that's like, yeah, I can change these things. But I have to change my thoughts first about the way I'm approaching things. So and then from there, take the Mercury trine Saturn, which is just a really great aspect for just getting down to the practical matters of things, for rolling the sleeves up and being like, this is the details I need to take care of. These are the things that need to be done. These are the forms that need to be filled out. These are, whatever it may be, the communications, the emails that need to go out, that kind of thing. But it really can cut through some of that confusion of the Mercury Neptune and bring some, grounding in, bring some precision in, bring some focus in, bring some concentration in, and really, maybe take some of what we've imagined with the Mercury Neptune that maybe we were too far out with, and bring it into a grounded place where it works a lot more harmoniously with the real world. But there's still a trick, because on Sunday, Mercury will quincunx Pluto, and Venus at the same time is sesquiquadrating Pluto. And what that shows is like we could easily fall quickly into coercion in our minds again. Mercury Pluto quincunx is a lot of like, there's an obsession with what we believe in. And it can create a lot of problems, that it can get us into complex situations, complex arrangements, disinformation, propaganda, all kinds of stuff that we may be pushing ourselves or maybe getting pushed at us. So we really need to kind of, it can create a suspicious kind of energy, when you're like that, and really, complicate things and make it harder to get what you actually want, because it creates a lot of distrust, things like that. So we really need to kind of let go of the intensity of that and allow things to occur and adjust to them. And the Venus sesquiquadrate Pluto is just showing, where a lot of that frustration is actually going to come from trying to tell other people where we're at and them not being receptive about it, or feeling very intense that you trigger them, and bring up some really deep, intense stuff that, that gets them upset. So kind of a tricky energy, but also could be very useful. Mercury and Mars this week, really wanting to change, bring transformation based on the new information it has, but realizing it's a long road ahead, and that there's a lot of things that need to be organized and taken care of to do that. But there's a new moon, so we have our opportunity to do that. But it's a new moon that's in Cancer and can easily allow our emotions to get away from us and pull us away from what we really need to do. So, and especially with the Jupiter conflagrating things, it can get really, really intense on that level too. So we have to remember and be conscious of that, or it can be a very tricky week. And I really think on a societal level, there's so much stress going on because of the resources and economy, and in the U.S., the judicial system, in Europe, the war, in China, economics, just so much. And, and I'm sorry I'm not mentioning every other country in the world, because I know, that, it's like that everywhere. It's not just, the big countries that are going through this. In fact, the smaller countries have suffered a lot of these things more acutely than a lot of the bigger countries have. So so there's a lot of change going on, and it can be very stressful to people. And when that Cancer energy isn't getting what it wants, it can get really lost in its own subjectiveness and unable to really take in without fear. So there's a lot of work, but use that Aries energy to be brave, to push ahead, and then use this Mercury and Mars energy to correct, the things that were off, and get them grounded again and moving in the real world. All right, this is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. This is a free service. What can you do to pay me back? I can tell you what you can do right now. As soon as you're done, you can email or text or whatever the link to somebody else you might know who would be interested in hearing this, who might have some interest in astrology. And remember, if you're not have any knowledge of astrology, just listen to the energy. It doesn't really matter what the planets are doing. You don't need to know that. You need to be conscious of that energy so that you can work with it. It's a powerful tool, and it's a free service I'm giving you. So please use it wisely and pass it on. And if you need a reading, I am a professional astrologer. I have been doing readings for over 20 years, all types of readings, people having amazing experiences once they get to know the energies in their chart, which is a natal chart reading, or the energies of the year, which every year I recommend around your birthday, you get your own personal weather report for the next year, so you know the energy you're working with this year, or you're just blind about it. And, it's going to be more of a, throw some stuff at the wall. Some of it may stick, some of it may not. How about having more of it stick, And I think it's a worthy investment for you. Relationship charts, if interested in having a relationship chart done. Child's charts, look at the first 20 years of child's life and the basic energy. Elections, for if you have an event that you need to have the best timing for success. Easily done. Simple horary questions. If you have some emotionally burning question that you can't make a decision about, it's so hard to. A lot of times we can find that. And any kind of specific area, too. You want to see what's going on. Those are available. And relocation astrocartography, if you're looking about moving somewhere else or wanting to align with your chart's energies on the planet better, All kinds of fixed star readings, too, if you're looking for deeper soul purpose. So all these are available. Email me and we'll talk about prices and what it takes. And it's MATTHUE 823@gmail.com. MATTHUE 823@gmail.com. And if you're on the YouTube or Instagram, remember I'm on Instagram, Astrological Winds Channel, or many different podcasts, you can always leave a comment in there too. And a lot of times, I'll see the comments. That's another way you can get me. All right, folks, new moon. Try to use it well. And like I said, next week I will do July's monthly with the weekly. All right, until then, this is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds Channel, taking off for another week. We'll see you then.